Columbus 2 is an enhanced new version of the travel route program called Columbus. It's primarily designed to help you display your travel routes on maps. Columbus 2 has several new features, like animated 3D objects for head and key points. It has zoom controls for use on high-resolution maps, and new route functions. Columbus 2 does require at least SmartEdit 3.1 or above, and at least 256 megabytes of RAM. You also need to have a DVD burner. The DVD burner is necessary because the file size of Columbus 2 and all of its expansion packs and expansion maps are just simply too large for smart cards. Columbus 2 does have its own CD link, so you can actually go to our website and write a CD that just contains the Columbus 2 and all of the Columbus expansion programs. That way, when you come into your install product, you can try them out in a demo mode or buy or activate them for your Casablanca. As I scroll down here, you can see that there are actually, in fact, several add-on programs that you can get for Columbus 2, including these big maps and also these Columbus 2 expansion objects. Some of the objects that we have in here, Columbus includes places of interest, so several well-known buildings and tourist attractions that you can look at. There's a new series of flags that you can put in as key objects, and there's more traveling options for objects that might be moving along your path or objects that remain at key points. These objects can be found in the image pool or pattern generator of your Casablanca, but mostly used when you get inside the Columbus 2 program itself. The big maps are also found in your image pool or pattern generator, and these are very high resolution maps. If you do try to create an image of these in your scene bin from the pattern generator, you're only going to get a zoomed in look of these because they're larger than our video aspect ratio. But we'll take a look at a little bit of these when we go into the program, and you'll see how these work in accordance with the Columbus 2. So to find Columbus 2, come back out to your Edit menu. And down in your scene bin, we're working in an area here for Special. And in Special, you're going to scroll north of the white line, and you're going to find Columbus 2. Now there are a couple parts here to Columbus 2 before we get into the program. Number one here is called the mode. You can choose from three options here. You can either choose to use it in the classic mode, which means that Columbus 2 will have the controls and features of Columbus 1, and it'll reference scenes directly from your scene bin. You can use it in the video extension mode, which also means it's going to be referencing scenes in the scene bin, but it'll have the controls and features of Columbus 2. Do note if you have the video extension option set here, if I come back out to the scene bin, it's only going to use the first frame of a video clip. Or if you want to create your own maps, you can come into New and scroll down here to your pattern generator or image pool. And from that area, select one of your choices, like the Express Maps, or you can come up here and choose Columbus itself. Columbus 2 has its own series of maps that you can choose. And note that all of these maps here are copyright free, so you can use these without any worries of any copyright violations. If you choose to shoot your own video clip from maybe a stand with a camera and you load it in with a map, make sure you do have the rights to that map, or maybe perhaps design your own map. There's also a third choice here called Image Pool Extension. This is kind of directly what it means, is that you're going to be referencing those maps directly from your image pool. This is best used if you're using some of the expansion packs like Big Maps. Big Maps have a very high resolution so that you can use the animation parts of zoom controls in Columbus 2 with those. And you want to again have this mode set to image pool. Your split video option here, this basically means that if you do set up a series of key points on your map, little points that as you move along the direction changes or different things happen at those points, you can choose to make your scene split up into sections. That way you can insert different transitions or different cutaways during your map process. You would choose yes in that case. If you just wanted to create one long scene of your route and your object moving along the route, then just set that to no. Under the quality option, you'll have choices of low, normal, good, or high. I'd only recommend using low or maybe normal for quick resolution checks on your map. These will probably be a little bit too compressed for you. So you're best using good or high, and although that will require more rendering speed, more rendering time, these are going to give you a really nice quality map animation with your objects. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this set to good. To go into the Columbus 2, you'll just come up here to click Start Program. And one note I would make here is that this program can be used with PowerKey, and I would highly recommend using PowerKey as a method to jump between key points, as you can use the page up or the page down button to hop between key points and delete them. It's a lot easier than trying to use the trackball to finite click on those key points. So let's go ahead and left click on Start Program so you can get an idea of what's going on here in Columbus 2. The first thing that we're seeing here is a default setting of the Columbus 2 program. Now we're going to move through this program in step-by-steps, but we're not necessarily going to go one button at a time. I'm going to try to move through as if you were setting up your map for the first time, and then try to hit on the points of areas that we didn't cover along the way so you know the additional features that the program offers you. The first thing that we're seeing here is a default background map, and we're seeing a default route. This first thing here, this is a little arrow that's highlighted in green, meaning it's active. This is what's called your starting point. The little X button here is your ending point. Whenever you left click on those, they turn blue, become a controllable action that you can move. Left click again to drop it down. If we want to try to reset everything in here, there is this option down at the bottom called Default. And when you switch this in, it says, do you want to switch to your default values? And you can say yes, and it'll reset back to this setting that you see here. These large points that we're seeing, these are called key points, meaning that whatever is happening here is generally linked to a visible object or provides you other options, such as the ability to adjust the pause time and modify the look of an object in that area. If you left click on the line again, or the route, it'll drop down another point that you can left click and stretch around. These that don't have any particular settings on them are called waypoints. And all these do is influence the path of the line, but not the final video. So you won't see a little dot here on the final video. It's only going to give you a direction change on your route for any kind of moving object. In this case, it's kind of a moving arrow. Columbus 2 is like several other programs in the Casablanca that if you right-click, you don't fumble out of the program. You actually have to come down here and click on your hotkey to actually exit out of the Columbus 2. We have down here another option, the I. This gives you info about the current version of the Columbus 2. And if you do have Columbus 2, you should be working on version 2.3, at least at this point at the time of production. You know what the default does. There is an Archives button. Archives works the same way as it usually does, like entitling or coloring. You can either choose to save a particular line or route with all its settings, or maybe load one that's been saved from before. Remember, the Archives here is not actually saving the information that you may have as your background or such. It's saving the route command and all the settings that you set up for this route. The Preview button is actually going to give you a full screen preview of your animation for your route. Now this isn't going to be as smooth as your final product, but it'll give you a good indication of how the route is moving along, especially based on time. Now above here is the actual time slider, and it defaults to around 8 seconds. This gives you the accurate time of how long it takes to go from the starting key point to your ending key point. If we want to change the length of this route, we can certainly do that once we start getting into these modes over here on the left. You also always have the option to move your menu up or down or minimize it with your common repetitious buttons here. Now the first place you're normally going to probably go when you're working in Columbus 2 is down here under the Global Settings. Global settings basically refer to universal settings that it's applying to your route for things such as your head object, which is your moving item along the route, or items that are key objects, such as these little pin options that are on key points. You'll see that once we switch the mode, it says Global Settings, and here's a large drop-down list of all the options in Global Settings. The first place I'm going to go is called Map. Now under Map, since we chose the Image Pool extension before we entered the program, I can click on Select Map, and what's going to pop up is your all too familiar Image Pool. And in the Image Pool, I'm going to choose my product, and I'm going to select one of the maps from the add-on programs of Big Maps, such as Big Maps America, and hit OK. Under Type, I'm going to switch to Images, and here are over 120 high-resolution map images. And I'm going to choose just a basic United States, and you can even see that you can choose 3 different options of a basic map, one with borders, and then with borders and cities. And I'll hit OK. And if I can see here, I move the map up out of the way. Now we can see we're here up in the northwest, and we can adjust our area of the map in just a moment. But I did want to select the map first before I did anything else. The next option you'll probably do is your global settings. You might set your time, determining how long you want to have your route. You may do this now, or you may come back and change it, but just know now that we can set a route to be longer or shorter. As you can see, I'm scrolling to the left to shorten the length of this map. Also, for the purpose of this demo, it'll make it quicker when we check our previews. The next thing I might want to do is that, of course, I'm looking at a large scale image here of our map. I'm going to come down here to this button called the Editor area. And the Editor area is going to let you see your map, but it's going to give you the options to select any of your key points or your waypoints. These are your controls to view your maps. You can use your zoom slider to pull in or out or zoom in on your maps. And I'm going to kind of pull out a little bit. And you can use the horizontal sliders to slide to the left or to the right, or use the vertical slider to move up or down if the map will allow, based on your zoom point. Remember that the editor area is different from the camera area. The camera area, which we'll visit in a little bit, allows you to have a camera path so that it kind of zooms in and moves along the route of your map. The editor area is just giving you your visual realm with your key points so you can kind of see what you're doing. Whenever you select any of these other modes, you'll always be viewing what you see in the editor area and not what you see as an actual motion with the camera area. As you see here under preview, this is showing you a camera area pan, giving you the camera as it moves along the path. So let's go ahead and set up our route. I'm actually going to go ahead and come up here and select my ending point and drag that somewhere here. And I'm going to select my key point and drag that. Whoops. Now here's one of the things that the power key is going to give you a hand in, is that whenever you select and accidentally drop down a waypoint such as this, a right click would normally remove this for you. But if you have difficulty trying to highlight a waypoint and click on it, then sometimes using the power key to use page up or page down to select which point you wish to work with will help you highlight that point. Once that point is selected, then you can always just use your delete key on your keyboard and remove that point. And then the home key will always let you grab and select your starting point, and then the end key on the keyboard would let you select and highlight your ending point. Now I've selected a little bit of a path here. I'm kind of moving from Colorado to Missouri, and I'm going to drag this over a little bit. So we're going to come out of Denver and go out to Kansas City on this map. And if I wanted to, I'm going to go ahead and select a waypoint here in the middle of the map and left click to grab it and drag that down here to somewhere in Texas around Dallas. So we're creating a little bit of a map path here. Now what I want to do is, now that I've selected my path, I've kind of determined my length, and you'll notice on the length slider, based on wherever you set this length slider, that is where you're going to be currently looking on the path. When I left click to set it, now you'll see here's kind of the area in which the map is stopped, right around here at the top of Texas. If I wanted to see where it was at the very beginning, then I'd roll my slider all the way to frame 0, and we'd be all the way up here at the starting key point. Now let's move over here to some additional modes. So you can see up here, the very first one here is called points. This is a very easy one. This is basically saying, okay, if you've selected a point, do you want it to be a key point or a waypoint? And if I wanted to, I can make this a key point, and then as soon as this changes over to be a key point, you'll now see that these buttons have become active, so I can do additional changes to this point. You also have a choice here for your line, if you want to make it angled, so it's more bent or curved. And you can also set up what's called the pause time, which means as your object or head object moves along your path to go to your final destination, you can make it actually pause at a particular key point. So I can roll this up and make this 1 second. So whatever object moves, when it hits this point, it will pause. This also gives you the benefit of, after building this map for your scene bin, and you do want to make it split up, then your object will roll down here to the key point, pause, and then that's where it will be a split for your scene, and then the second clip in your scene bin will be the remaining pause and the continuation to your ending point. The next place we're going to come up and look at is the global options again. And under global options, we're going to come down here through the scroll list and talk about a couple of options here in your route. Up at the top, we have the first choice here called line progression. And line progression is telling us that as we move along our map, we can choose to have, you can see now that I move forward a little bit, we have this yellow line. And do we want to make the yellow line dotted, or even more spread out as your line path? You can even make it draw the progression. So if you actually wanted to draw this line as you move across it, you can turn it on or off. So now without the line, I've turned it off. Now it's just going to be your head object moving along the route. If you actually want the line to draw, then make sure this is active or checkmarked. You can make the line larger or wider. I'm going to switch this back up to a solid line so you can kind of see the difference there. Or you can turn it down to 1 and make it real thin. Or also choose your line color using your color pool. Under line course, back here under global settings, we can actually have it draw along a course, which means there will always be a line already set from your starting key point to your ending key point, and that your line progression will move along it. You'll see what I mean by the preview here. You can see that white line is already set there, and the red line just fills in as you progress through your map. You can turn that on or off, of course, with your check mark. I'm going to turn it off, so we only see the line as we move along. We can also do things like text attributes. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But next we're going to take a look here at a couple things called the key object and the head object. The key object, very simply, is an object that places over your key points. And in this case, as in global settings, there'll be an object around every one of your key points. All three of these guys would have an object. To see those objects, you want to make sure the check mark is set to on. To select a key object, let's come in here to select a key object, and we can choose, now you can see our image pool. Here's Columbus 2. In those programs we talked about earlier, we have flags, objects of interest, and you can do additional journeys on your maps as well. In this case, under miscellaneous, we can choose what we want to have as a highlight or a pointer to our key points. Little flags and little pin pushers, these are probably your best options, and you can choose what color you wish that to be. So I'm going to hit OK. And right now it's rather difficult to see those little pinpoints here, so I'm going to actually go back to the editor area and choose to come into my map so we can kind of see the area in which we're working a little better. So I'll scroll this using my sliders, and now I'll come back here to global settings and increase my object size. You can actually see down there at Dallas, these are starting to enlarge, and as you adjust the slider, you will only see the one that is changing, and then it will apply the global changes to all other key points. The key object, so key position, this is real simple. You can see how it'll move down at the bottom. This is adjusting the position of your key objects, either on the X or the Y axis, up or down or left or right. Just basically how close it is to your key point. Key view, these are all real-time sliders. You can see now I'm kind of wiggling around that pin pusher so I can kind of see how the angle is on the different access points now on the X, Y, or Z. And you just set it up the way you like, and then that will apply its changes to all the key points. Head object actually refers to the object that moves along your route. And as we saw earlier, that was actually a big moving arrow. So under Select Head Object, as long as you got this turned on, that means you will be using a head object. Click on Select Head Object to open up your image pool. And again, you can either choose the product or you can also choose the type. And there's more objects in here based on what you have from your add-on programs. So you can choose to have these animated objects move along your path. You can do pets, you can do different water vehicles, aircrafts, buses, all sorts of different ways to apply an object to your path. And I'm actually going to use a car in this case to move along a map. And I'm just going to choose this Roadster, and if I want, I'm just going to leave the color set to red and hit OK. Well, my path is already red, so my object's red. That might be a little distracting. So sometimes you have to come in and make your adjustments. And I'll just choose this SUV. And now we can choose the object size, and there you see it down at the bottom of how large you want it to be, and whether or not you want it to follow along the path. That's what the auto direction button does. If you turn this off, you'll notice that your vehicle just kind of moves in that same position as it moves along the path. If you turn auto direction on, then it actually drives or moves along that path, following the direction that the route is going, and giving you that three-dimensional look as well. That's pretty cool. Head position, head view, these are the same things as you saw before. So you can basically adjust the position and angle that it's set to the key point, or set the head view of your object so you can see a better tilt or a better three-dimensional look to your appearance of your object. Head transition, this is something we're going to come back to in a moment. But basically, head transition means that you can set up every key point along your path. If I chose to left click and drop more along here and set these to be key paths, I can make my object fade in and out or do some kind of effect on every single one of my key points. So the car can move along here, fade in, fade out. Come back in, along here, fade in, fade out. So you can choose to give it these effects, if you wanted to, on every single key point as a global setting. I'm going to leave these set to off and go ahead and right-click and delete my other waypoint. And the other things that we have in here, we have light. So if you want to have light hit your key point objects, such as the pins and the car, you can turn it on and choose it to be normal lighting or spotlight lighting, and what direction you want your light source to be hitting your objects. Light color is generally going to probably be a nice white color for you, so it lights your objects evenly, but you can choose to apply like a gel or a filter to your light so it would change the colors of your objects. Okay, a couple more options in here. We've already checked out time, although I will mention to you that if you do choose to add transitions on your key points or add pauses to your key points, these do add to the total time of your route. So even though I did set up an original 4-second route, I did add a 1-second pause, so the total length of this map will actually be a 5-second scene in the scene bin. This option is going to allow you to configure how the camera moves in the case of oversized maps. You can either have the camera be automatic, so it automatically moves along the paths till you get to your key points, and you can do it only at stopover or key points, or at every point, including waypoints. If you choose the camera control to be manual, meaning that at each key point you're going to manually have an adjustment done, you can do that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and set this to automatic, only for the key points. Now when you're working with camera, now that we want to exit out of the global settings, we're going to come over here to the camera mode. The one thing you need to determine before you go into camera is which key point is highlighted while you're in the editor viewing area. I want to select this key point down here at the bottom, so this is green and active. That way when I come over here to my camera area, now you can see I'm now working with this camera area. If I had set my global settings to manual, then I would have additional sliders here to adjust the horizontal and vertical placement. But all I want to do is actually change the zoom, so we actually zoom in to this area on our map. So that way when I hit preview, see how we're zooming in, and then the pause, and now the camera pulls back out. So if I come back to the editor area, I can highlight each one of these key points, and I can already see I made an error. I actually sent us on a trip to St. Louis when I had meant to go to Kansas City. So you can simply left-click, drag and drop your key points to move locations. If I wanted this particular key point to have an adjustment, I can come up to the camera area and I can choose to also zoom in. So maybe I zoom in even farther to Kansas City. Now when I do my preview, we zoom into Dallas. It'll do its pause, and then as we move forward, the truck will spin up to Kansas City. And of course I can come back into my global settings and make some changes to the angle and pitch of that car if I didn't like how it was turning on that path. But just remember that the camera area is different from the editor area. Camera is viewing your camera motion along your key points. The editor area is allowing you to work on your key points or on your route. There's a couple other options in here that are worth mentioning. When you select a key point, and only on key points, you'll get this T button, which you're familiar with as a titler. And under titler, you can always click on your text box and click on something. I'll do something generic like start and hit OK. And we can barely see that right now, but we can change the size in a moment. And you can adjust the position of that title. And I might just put it right underneath my key point and give it some distance. Now when you come back into global settings, we'll switch from camera and scroll up to this one we passed over before called text attributes. And all of this is going to be very familiar to you. select your font and size, so you can choose any font that you'd like, adjust the size, hit OK, and then it's going to apply your title changes. You, of course, could always do this after you build your map if you want to use the original titler to use more titling effects. This is just going to basically be a stamp-on, stamp-off title that's permanently on your map here once it renders. But if you want it, you can use it, and you can adjust your font color if you want to. You can adjust the outline around the letters, and you can choose your outline color as well, or even use your alpha transparency levels if you want to apply those to your titles. If you don't want them, then you can always come back up here to the text and just blank the line and use the titles that are already on your map, or again, title afterwards. There's one other option in here that you can use as well, and that's up here under the Look button. Under the Look button, this is going to give you the options that when you choose a key point, if you would like to apply an individual non-global change to that particular key point. I've got this one selected down below, and I can choose either my key object or adjust how things are going to look just at this particular key point. The key thing here is when you choose your object, whether it's the key object or the head object, you want to turn the global to be off, or you want to take the global and make it local, which means you're going to do a localized change. Now under key object, as the object is set to local, I can select a completely different key object. And under two-dimensional objects, one thing I would like to note, the 2D objects should only be used for key points, mainly because they're not going to be very suitable for moving along your animated path when they're only two-dimensional and not three-dimensional, especially when they're using the automatic motions. But if I wanted to, I can come in here and I can choose to have a different type of key object. Again, you may be using some of the default options from Columbus 2, or I can come up here and switch to one of the add-on programs like country flags, or maybe objects of interest. I can choose a different type of building. Entirely up to you what you'd like to use here. There's a world options. I'm just going to choose a different type of, let's see, I'll stick to Columbus 2. And I'm going to choose, let's see, miscellaneous. I'll choose the globe and hit OK. So then down here at that key point, that's going to apply just this change of the key point here because it's localized. You can see that the other ones are still set to global. If you wanted to, you can also adjust the key position or the key view of this particular one. And you can also do things with your head object. You can actually tell the head object that as it moves along the path, once it reaches this key point, you actually want to change your key object, or your head object, excuse me. So now when I click on Select Head Object, I can change this to be a different type of vehicle. Maybe you take the bus from this area. So now it does a change. And now when I hit preview, we have our vehicle going to this key point, and then as it pauses, it changes out. Now it would probably be better on this particular key object to apply a transition. So now I can choose a fade in and a fade out on this particular point. So that way when we move along the path, it reaches this key point, fades out, and then in comes our bus, which needs to be resized, then go back up to Kansas City. So you can definitely come in here and do all sorts of really great changes and neat things to your path using this look option to individualize what's happening at key points. If you did want to apply a global change to these, then do make sure that your key points, each one of them, if you were to select several on here, make sure each key point under your look is not set to current, but set to global. That way that all the fade in and fade outs that you apply from the global settings here would happen at every one of those points along the path. So you can definitely make some changes there. So now if I wanted to, I'm going to go ahead and make some corrections. I'm going to fix a couple of these objects, mainly for the demo. It was trying to show you how you can make some adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and start making some changes here to my key objects. And I'm going to go ahead and come up to the global changes and make an adjustment to my head object so it also is not as large. And then I'm going to go ahead and come out and then hit OK. And now it's going to start building our map based on our settings in Columbus 2. So I'll speed this up for the demo. And then here's our final video. Again, if I found mistakes in that video and I didn't like them, When you exit out of Columbus and start building, it actually keeps that information still inside here for us. So I can hit preview and see what's going on there, and I can come back in. Remember, I'm got to go back to my editor area and find where our area is, and I can come in here and start making some corrections. Start adjusting the head objects, maybe its look, maybe change the route, maybe this is too short. You can definitely come back in and start making some changes. Once you do create your scenes back here in the scene bin, you can add them up to the storyboard. And then one other thing just to mention that there are in here is that in the transitions menu, Columbus does provide a handful of transitions so that you can do different transitions between maybe where you pause on a key point and go into maybe a cutaway of your environment and then cut back to your map making. Then each one of these can be used as maybe a circle transition or as a zoom transition, or of course you can always do your classic crossfade to transition between your scenes. You can experiment around with these a little bit to see how the differences are once you start applying your transitions to your video. This is going to be a great way to really enhance your maps, and it's going to be a really fun way to do it too.